All right. Well, let's get this party started. Well, if I haven't met you already this weekend, again, my name is Hunter Hinson, a student at the Oxford Internet Institute and Shirley Scholar, as well as one of the logistics directors here at the summit this weekend. And again, extremely excited for today's final keynote prior to the drinks reception. And I'm pleased to introduce two fantastic speakers for this keynote, sponsored by our summit's lead sponsor, Truepic. So first, we have someone who has worked as a foreign service officer with the US Department of State across the world in different cities, including Damascus, Washington, Istanbul, and New York in the US mission to the United Nations. He's also an adjunct professor at Columbia University, a TEDx speaker, and a term member with the Council on Foreign Relations. His writing has been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the World Economic Forum, and The Hill. And last, but certainly not least, he's the Executive Vice President of Public Affairs and Impact for Truepic. Please give a big round of applause for Mounir Ibrahim. We'll have our speakers come up together. They're a team. And secondly, we have an expert in the computer science industry, someone who has spent more than 30 years in the industry creating, incubating, and releasing new solutions to complex problems. Currently, he leads the Azure Media Security team and directs Microsoft's media provenance investments across the company, and serves as the chair for the Coalition for Content Authenticity and Provenance. Please give a big round of applause for Andrew Jenks, and now Mounir Ibrahim as well.
Thank you very much.
We are acutely aware that we are all that stands between you and drinks. Yeah, that was a fantastic intro. As he said, I'm Andrew Jenks. I'm super excited to be here today. It's been a great conference all day. Let's have some fun.
So this will only take about 2.5 hours. We have about 70 slides. This is fitting to close out the day on digital content provenance. You will notice our little CRs here that stand for content credentials, and that is the logo of the C2PA open standard. We'll talk about that more, but you'll notice there's Truepic, there's Microsoft, there's the Publicis Group, there's CBC, there's Adobe. A lot of the companies behind this are here at this event because we truly believe that this concept of digital content provenance really does hold promise for generative AI. I want to take a moment to just thank Cassidy and OII and the entire Oxford team here. This is a remarkable conference that they have been incredibly creative. We're honored to sponsor this, so thank you for the opportunity to allow us to. So, we're going to walk through digital content provenance, and I would like to start with this fundamental notion, and I hope we do all agree, and I actually heard it in the last panel too. We've digitized our entire existence. Everything we do, all the decisions of consequence, as we call them at Truepic, are largely digitized. If you think about, who you date, what you buy online, who you vote for, what you believe, digital content influences all of it. More so for younger generations too. I teach a class at Columbia, and I am amazed at the level of influence, TikTok and other social media platforms that I'm too old to use even, or know about, influence the decision-making we make. That's from a personal level. I also want to talk a little bit from a business standpoint. Businesses have also digitized their operations and existence. It is efficient. It creates better customer service and satisfaction. Some of the clients we work with are insurers and banks and lenders and real estate companies because by digitizing operations, it creates efficiency. All of these areas in our personal and our business and industry lives, we are reliant on digital content. If we don't have transparency and authenticity in that digital content, that creates a variety of challenges for us. We fundamentally believe this concept of digital content provenance is not only a nice to have for our future, it is foundational. If we are going to digitize our lives, our informational ecosystem in our industries, we better hope that there's authenticity and transparency in the digital content we're making decisions off of. We do believe that provenance and the C2PA open standard, which is referred to as content credentials now, is actually hope and promise to actually make that happen. It is not a panacea, it is not a silver bullet, it does not solve all disinformational challenges we are facing today, but it is a positive step forward. And this idea of provenance is attaching the artifacts, all the information, the facts about the origin and the changes to a piece of digital content to that file so that you can transparently see that and make more accurate decisions. It is not a yes, believe it, no, don't believe it, binary outcome. It is transparency in that content. Last year we had, or it wasn't even last year, it was actually January, we had the opportunity to be here at the inaugural event, and we spoke about it. I spoke a little bit of my origin story and how I got here. Prior to my time here at Truepic, I was a Foreign Service officer with the US Department of State. I served in a variety of locations, most notably in Syria at the start of the Arab Spring. There I saw the use of user-generated content, people capturing images and videos of atrocities, of oppression, of attacks by police and secret police against civilians. I saw that later in my career enter into the highest level of international debate at the UN Security Council. There I saw this concept of the liar's dividend. Countries, critics, anybody who wanted to undermine that digital content would just stand up and say, well, that's fake. Prove to me that's real. There was no way to prove it was real. So you can see this picture here of me pointing, that was right here last year, talking about that. And since that time, you know, I put just a few of the headlines that have transpired between January and now, just identifying how digital content is influencing our decisions, but people are either creating synthetic content to dilute it or using the liar's dividend to simply say it is manipulated or fake. We decided to try and do something about it. Last year, we spoke about how digital content provenance could be very useful. Truepic partnered with Microsoft, and we deployed digital content provenance on the ground in Ukraine. We've been working for over a year now with the US Agency for International Development and its partners on the ground to document cultural heritage and destruction to nationally significant infrastructure. The purpose is, by using Truepic's camera that will authenticate the digital content at the point of capture, and Microsoft's cloud, so that all that provenance data at the point of capture is maintained and then displayed out from their cloud. The C2PA standard, which Andrew will talk a little bit more about, created what we call the first glass-to-glass system, where you could capture an image and then see those details all throughout the chain. To date, this is actually a bit outdated. It's well over 600 cultural heritage sites that have been attacked, nearly 2,000 images, and of those 2,000 images, we know of at least 10 different criminal proceedings that are using those images throughout various prosecutors in Ukraine. And that is something that we were incredibly delighted by, that this concept, that this theory that digital content provenance could actually be useful. We've proven that. We're going to show a very quick video. I hope this works easily on how they are in fact using it.
Society, together with international partners, have both technology and innovation to ensure accountability.
Commencing in 2023, Truepic, a provider of authenticity infrastructure for the Internet, and Microsoft, a powering program called Provenance. This is the world's first interoperable system utilizing the C2PA open standard through Truepic secure mobile camera technology in conjunction with the Microsoft Azure Cloud Platform. This is to assure that authenticity and maintain the provenance of captured image from storage to display. The platform enables users to verify images as authentic and transparently display their time, date, location, and source to the viewers. Any modifications to the image can therefore be detected.
Okay, let's see if I can get back to the slide. Okay, works. Wonderful. Perfect. By the way, thanks to Edwin, who has truly done a remarkable job. So that's a short video from our partners, known as the Anti-Corruption Headquarters, who are on the ground and packed on the ground in Ukraine using this. And the concept of this was that the C2PA open standard and our combined technologies can help preserve and authenticate what is real. Today, we've been talking about what is not actually real, what is synthetic, what is generative. How can this same concept be used with generative AI? So it's great if we can protect what is in fact authentic and prove that's authentic, but don't people need to know when something's also synthetic? Well, that's also something that not only our company at Truepic, but Microsoft, Adobe, and so many others are working on. You can apply this same open standard to synthetic creations at the point of creation. This is not hyperbole. This is in action today on a number of platforms. I'll briefly speak about how Truepic has used it, but Microsoft has a ton of other applications. Our colleague from Adobe, you should definitely ask Laura about how they're using it as well. You'll see the video on my right-hand side, probably your left-hand side, of Nina Schick, a very well-known, actually, UK-based author and thought leader on deepfakes and synthetic content. In April, Truepic partnered with an organization named Revel AI. They create amazing synthetic videos and deepfakes. You might know the one of Morgan Freeman. They've created that one and others. And we produce what we call the world's first transparent deepfake. And what that is, it is this amazing video of Nina that is about a minute long, but what it is, it's signed by the C2PA open standard. So that when you view the video, there is the content credentials, as you can see on the upper right-hand corner of the video, that you can drop down and see that it contains generative AI, that it was created by Revel AI at this time, and it was signed using Truepic's technology. On the other side, actually last week, we launched a partnership with Hugging Face, in which anybody in the world can go onto a Hugging Face space. We call it generative AI with content credentials, and you can generate your own synthetic media with content credentials. You can download that image and you can pass it along to any compliant software, website, etc. You can put it into Photoshop, you can edit it while maintaining the transparency and trust throughout the entire process. We also did the same thing by combining watermarking and provenance. This is an experimental site that many in the industry have been discussing. Claire Leibowitz and the Partnership of AI, for AI have done an amazing job of really investigating how these techniques can be combined. So this is all hopeful. Again, it is not a panacea, but this is in action today for preserving authentic media, but also adding transparency to synthetic media. We do believe this is going to be the future of our online ecosystem. I'm going to pass this off to Andrew. Next slide.
And I can press the thing. I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to continue in that same theme of, look, this is real today. In February of this year, Satya, the CEO of Microsoft, got on stage and said, you know what? We believe that provenance is a cornerstone of what we're going to do for generative AI. And as we adopt these technologies, we believe that disclosure to end users so that they've been utilized for the creation of images, video, and other types of content is imperative. That mimics what we've seen now from the platform on our partnership on artificial intelligence. Oh, Claire's going to be mad at me. on PAI's requirements for generative AI. It mimics what we've seen from the White House. It's this idea that generative AI isn't bad, not knowing whether something was created is and can be bad. So Satya got on stage and said, we're going to do this by the end of the year for Bing Image Creator and Office Designer. We also released a set of what we use internally at Microsoft to determine the impact of generative AI systems, right? What we call the Responsible AI Framework. It's available publicly, and it's basically the checklist that we use to say, is this potential use of Gen AI something that is positive, or is it going to be a net negative? And it helps us reason through that. That was one of the steps that we took in order to help many of y'all in industry and other folks in the enterprises be able to evaluate their own uses of Gen AI and make sure that systems that were being developed were acting in the best interest of us, the citizenry. So I'm happy to say that that exists today on Bing Image Creator. You can go, I created an image of the Oxford Generative AI Summit, didn't include it on the slide. We're really bad at letters in Bing AI right now, so we've got to work on that. But you can go see content credentials today on images that are generated. Same thing in Firefly from Adobe. Same thing in Designer soon. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, though, coming down the pike. One of the questions that we get asked quite frequently when we talk about provenance is, so where's the content going to come from? Nothing has it today. How are we going to get from nothing to a reasonable amount so that when you're telling me and explaining to me the origin of media, I have a pretty good chance of being able to get that information. There are tons of products coming down the pike from Microsoft, from others. There are open source solutions now to be able to sign and generate media. There are partnerships like the ones that you had with Hugging Face to allow this to work in open source tools. This is available and real today, and it's only going to get more real over the rest of this year. One of our partners, Bruce McCormick from Project Origin, is sitting in back there. He's got a whole bunch of news agencies who are lining up to say, hey, how can we use provenance on our material to differentiate it from potentially synthetic material? We've got others in the advertising space, worried about brand protection. This is the type of issue that we consider brass tacks for the internet, right? We used to believe the things that we saw and heard because they were a newspaper delivered to our door. They were radio waves broadcast over our television set. When we moved to the internet, we digitized everything like Mounir was talking about, we forgot to take those metaphors with us. And so we're backfilling some of those metaphors, and provenance is one of those ones that we need to figure out. So transparency of media is going to be a best practice, and you don't have to believe us because we have a vested interest in it. You can believe the White House, you can believe Norway, you can believe Australia, you can believe the EU, the UK, governments the world over, individuals. Nina's another great example, PAI is another great example. Like, look, this is fundamentally getting traction across the board. For a while, we weren't sure if we were right or not, and now it seems like this is the way that the world and the industry is going. So all of this is based on this thing called C2PA, because Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity is way too long. That specification, that organization exists only to make specs and standards to explain how to do provenance. You can think of this as the TCP/IP for the internet, right? It is just the protocol that we use to communicate information. The important part here is that that spec is interoperable. It provides tamper evidence. It supports not just images and video, but almost any form of digital data that you can think of, right? We think of things like training data sets and the output of those data sets, databases. What about the PDF file that I get emailed for a corporate briefing? What about the picture that I upload to my insurance company to start a claim? Or the picture that I download for Match.com, Bumble, something like that, Airbnb, right? All of these have a need for provenance, and this spec provides that capability. Moreover, it provides that capability of following media from step to step. So you can have these chain of manifests, just like a physical chain of custody that you see in every police drama. This can be a digital chain of custody. It can show you where it's been, why, and what's happened to a piece of content. There's other cool stuff like there's really no way to tell generative AI algorithms not to use your material for training today, right? There is with C2PA. There's a do not train indicator that lets you proactively say, I don't want this to be used to train other data sets. We're working very closely with several different large AI companies to pay attention to that and view that as an input signal to them. Yeah, and some other stuff. Lots of people believe that this is a good idea. This slide's outdated. Well over 2,000 companies, individuals, organizations like Oxford who are involved in this activity today. The C2PA is set up to be free. Anyone can join. We have everyone from the largest companies to literally single-person companies. All of them have an equivalent voice and can come in and say, no, we think this needs to happen. We think the specification needs to address this use case. And get enough people together that want to do something, that's how things get done. So if you're interested in C2PA, but you wish that it did, oh, I've been using reputation management as an example all day. So let's say reputation management, you can come join and make it do reputation management, right? This is meant to be a egalitarian gathering of voices, because we believe this is an ecosystem-wide problem, and no one company, no one government should be in charge of the transparency of the media that we consume. That's the end. So, thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much for that. That was really interesting. We have about 15 minutes for questions before the drinks reception begins, where we'll start pouring. But we'll be taking any questions that you have. Would you guys like to pick or want me to? Okay, so we'll take the question over there first.
Hi, thank you for this great talk and for the great introduction. I was just wondering, when we label something as synthetic media, for example, with content credentials, what kind of value connotations are we kind of attaching to that piece of media? Because I think it's important to distinguish between something that's, media that's synthetic versus media that is misleading or harmful. But I'm worried that users online will sort of devalue, stigmatize, or distrust generated content just because it's generated or just because they see this label on it, when there are potentially many uses of synthetic media that are benign or beneficial. So I was just wondering, how would you address that implication of something like content credentials?
I'll actually go one further and say that in all likelihood, the cell phone that you use to take pictures with today is using artificial intelligence to enhance the image, right? This is already something that happens. This idea we talk about in the abstract as it's synthetic or it's authentic, that's a lie. There's a whole continuum of different combinations that you have to be able to express. It's one of the cool things about C2PA is that there's, I think, 14 stops along that continuum. So you can say everything from fully machine generated to only created by a human and several points in between. I think being able to express that nuance and that difference helps users understand better and keeps them from saying, this is generated, this is bad. I was talking in a session earlier today about generative AI being this great tool that allowed me finally to express myself artistically, right? That's a good use, that's a positive use. We have to make the differentiation between whether something's synthetic or authentic and whether it's or correct information completely separately, right? I can provide you authentic misinformation and tell you that it is transparent, but you shouldn't trust it. Those are two different decisions. Trust and transparency are two very different topics that we often commingle, and we've got to stop doing that, right? And so C2PA talks to transparency. It does not talk to trust. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I would just add one more or two more things to that. One, this is not meant to be a binary indicator. It is not meant to tell you, yep, believe it, nope, don't believe it. It is just giving you more information. And then secondly, speaking candidly, this is one of the big challenges, right? When this rolls out, media literacy and understanding and awareness of what this all means is going to be a big, larger than industry challenge. It's going to take a village to do that. When SSL became a very normal thing, I'll admit it took me a while to know what that padlock meant, you know, and that was just one indicator. We're going to need a similar type effort here.
Thanks for that. Adam Smith from the Conversation Media Group. My background's in journalism, so I was just wondering if you could speak a bit more to how you see this being implemented by news organizations. Obviously, journalists, photojournalists have their own kind of framing within the form that can affect the kind of truthfulness. So yeah, I guess it builds a bit on what you're saying around trust and transparency.
Okay, so I could probably answer that question for about 3 hours, and Bruce could answer it for about 3 days. So if you want to talk further about this, we're happy to. But in general, what we're seeing from the journalistic world is there's two real entry points to provenance. One is, can we use it to identify sources better? And like we showed in Ukraine, yes, sometimes you can. And I've created something. How do I make sure that other people don't tamper with it and impinge my brand, right? It's the sign your input, sign your work thing. Most journalistic organizations are starting with signing your work, right? Sign it on the way out so that if something shows up with BBC Chiron on it, people know that's not signed. People can tell that it didn't actually come from them. This actually happens all the time. We were having an origin meeting at the BBC when the last one of these happened, and everyone fled the room, and they spent many hours and millions of dollars trying to make a piece of misinformation go away. In between that is a whole range of embedding provenance into your processes so that you can track the edits as it goes through. That's kind of the newsroom scenario, and then the journalist scenario and the photojournalist scenario I think is even cooler. At Adobe Max last week, they were showing, the week before, they were showing the new version of the Leica M11P, which has provenance built into it. Canon and Nikon also have cameras that have, or have announced cameras that have provenance built into it from the point of capture. Right? That's a super cool thing to be able to say, not only did I provide this image, but I was standing right here when I did it. Now, there's some warning signs that come with that as well, right? There's some unintended consequences. But we are seeing huge interest and traction from the journalism segment generally, and frankly, that's where we started this journey, was how are we going to deal with deepfakes in news media? Say again?
You see it changing user-generated content, like completely, basically. You know, like those kind of videos that you're talking about coming out during the Arab Spring. Yeah.
So, yes and no, right? I see it as giving news organizations the ability to use generated content without misleading their audiences, right? Right now, we talk a lot about Gen AI, right? That's the point of this conference. That's the worst part. You know the biggest source of misinformation? Reuse of stock imagery. Reuse of stock imagery. It's a problem that's been around for literally decades and is responsible for about 80% of the misinformation that's out there today. It's insanity. With something like provenance, the ability to say this photo was taken 6 weeks ago instead of yesterday suddenly allows you to counter an awful lot of that, right? It's those types of changes that I think that we'll see. I don't think we'll see a wholesale change in how news operates.
And if I could add on the user-generated content piece, one of the things Truepic really excels in is in the mobile application, right? I envision a day in which this is hardwired into smartphones and it is optional, opt-in, for users, citizen journalists on the ground who want to add certain pieces of information with provenance or not. I do believe this is going to become an option for citizen journalists in user-generated content moving forward. It might take some time, but we're already seeing, again, the Ukraine example is one of them.
Thank you so much for the information. One of the other challenges of our time is around copyright. So I wonder if you have any points on the kind of creative side of this, perhaps arguably different to the journalistic side of this. And the question is inspired by your Nina Schick example. It didn't seem to me that this necessarily gives you the sort of desirable get out of jail card, in the sense that if Nina did not consent to your synthetic image being made, what's her redress? Do you have anything on that?
So we are looking at this idea of copyright, which is ever evolving, and I'll be transparent. When we did the Nina Schick video, you're absolutely right. Part of it we really wanted to bake in was her consent. And when you actually go see the video, we literally say it was done with her consent. And the idea of, in theory, someone like Nina or an organization could have their own private certificate where they are in fact signing or adding an assertion that they did consent to it. Something that we're still looking at, and I know the ideas of consent around generative AI are ever moving, but there could be application there. I know you might have some additional thoughts.
Yeah, so my other day job is I run digital rights management for Microsoft, right, and protect things like Hollywood content, where rights are incredibly important. And we have a rough idea of how provenance and rights management kind of play together to start expressing those concepts. What I don't have yet, and what Mounir was alluding to, is I don't have case law to understand how it should work, and more importantly, how it should evolve over time, right? If you make a piece of content and you sell the rights to me, how do I reflect that in something that's attached to the content itself? Those are kind of the issues that we struggle with, although I think there's definitely some synergy there, and I think we will eventually figure it out. Would love help on that?
Just one comment first. Of course, you said that provenance solution doesn't ensure the trust that's clear, but this will be one of the conditions that will allow brands, whether these are media brands, I work in media, or any other brands, to be trusted. My question is, because I know that this project very much focuses on photos and videos, but how does the text play in it? And do you also look at the solution, provenance solution for text?
Yeah, so the CTPA has a text working group that's spent a really long time looking at how to embed manifest information in text. And the conclusion that we came to is we can only do it as a sidecar manifest. I mean, something that doesn't travel with the file. That doesn't work very well. Frankly, for most of our cases, that's bad. It changes significantly if instead of talking about plain text, we're talking about a document, right? A PDF file, a Word document, a WordPerfect document, whatever. Once you stick it in that container, suddenly you have the ability to transmit manifest and information and assertions along with it. And so we've been putting an awful lot of effort into how to do that, how to specify that. And we don't have anything to announce yet, but you watch this space. Because we do have a lot of smart people from a lot of companies looking at how to solve that exact problem today. Yeah, schools are a weird one because, like, it started with, take that back. It started with, we don't want any of our students using ChatGPT to generate their papers, and now professors are using it to generate their syllabi, so I'm not real sure where we are in schools anymore.
I saw that a lot of the examples that were used in the slides were around images, but I was just wondering if similar systems were being thought about for language models and being able to distinguish the provenance of text online, for example, misinformation in our infosphere.
You want to talk about AI, or you want me to talk about AI?
No, you go for it.
Okay, I'll go for it. Yeah, so that's another area of research for C2PA. We already have work in the spec that says when you output from an LLM or from a model, this is the way you sign it. What we're looking at now is, how do you provide the provenance of the data set itself? Given an output, how do I tell you what went into it as input, right? That gets to a lot of really cool issues like use and copyright and other factors that are hugely important for the burgeoning AI space that we just don't have answers for yet. We're working on them, and we think we'll get there, but honestly, it's still an area of active research.
Well, I think we have about 3 more minutes, so I'll ask one final question for our guests, if that's all right. So I'm curious, when we mentioned that these products are completely free, and we know that these products are being developed by for-profit companies, so when critics argue, what is the catch here? Or what is this egalitarian messaging? What is the response to kind of quell those fears or that criticism?
Both our companies make money. You want to talk about this first?
Sure. No, it's true. We're both for-profit companies, and candidly, it's my firm conviction that you need for-profit entities to create this because you're constantly iterating. So it is very difficult for a nonprofit or a grant-based organization to constantly iterate and build upon it. The open standard is free. There are open source tools that anybody can use and adopt at any time. Truepic, we make products to make that easier. We make specialized cameras to adopt to create that authentic capture, and indeed those are sold to businesses and organizations that need them. There's a variety of ways in which we can increase the accessibility. We have grant programs, we work with nonprofits, et cetera, to increase accessibility. But the standard, the ability to use this open standard to ingest content credentials and display them, all of those are free for any organization to use.
Yeah, so Microsoft makes $1 or $2. One of the things that allows us to do is be able to do things that we consider a little bit more altruistic. And the driving factors for Provenance weren't, let's go make more money. They were, how do we help our Democracy Forward team preserve free and fair elections? And how do we stay ahead of the generative AI curve? Right? There is absolutely money that's going to be made on the back end from usage of cloud systems, usage of software and hardware that supports this, not just for our companies, but probably for hundreds, if not thousands, of other enterprises, right? But the reason we got into this was really, we were scared of misinformation, and we were scared of what effect that was going to have on democracy. The profit, if it shows up, is just kind of a nice side effect.
Can I actually add one thing to that? Interestingly, our founders at Truepic, they started the company for all the business fraud they were seeing. Insurers, banks, lenders, they take on massive fraud because, like I was saying before, digitize their operations. Those are actually the first movers and adopters of digital content provenance, and they use it to increase the efficiency of their systems. So it's actually, obviously much of our discussion here is how it's going to be a public good for society, and we all certainly, that's why we're here, that's why we're talking about it, but businesses are actually the first adopters.
Fantastic. Let's give a round of applause for our speakers.